Hello everyone. This video has been a long time coming, and we are finally doing it. So, a little backstory. I knew what Gilmore Girls was, right? I had heard of it. I'm not a big TV watcher in general. I'm more of a movie type of gal, but I had heard of it, but mostly because I was a very big Supernatural fan, and so that was my main reason for wanting to watch Gilmore Girls in the past, not when I actually watched it. I just got a lot of recommendations because I was like, I am extremely depressed. I am very unhappy. I need you guys to give me a good recommendation. And everyone and their mother said, you need to watch Gilmore Girls. So I was like, wait, that's the show that Jared Padalecki's in. I also knew of Alexis Bledel because of Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, right? So I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time. I mean, if everyone is recommending this, I have to watch it. And boy, oh boy, was I obsessed. So finally, in the pits of my depression, I was like, okay, it's finally time to watch the infamous Gilmore Girls. And let me just start this off by saying that it is my favorite show I've ever watched. Let me tell you really quickly my other favorite shows so that you get a preface of the kind of stuff that I like. Supernatural, Grey's Anatomy, Dexter. So honestly, not very similar. I can always appreciate a feel-good show, and I think the reason that I love this show so much is because it felt so cozy and so safe. And I was explaining this to my parents. They could never make a show like Gilmore Girls ever again because our attention spans nowadays, because of social media and everything, are so tiny. We're like goldfishes. But the amount of long, drawn-out conversations and the references that not a lot of people understand in the show, how much of that there is, it just wouldn't work. It just would not do well now because, number one, they can't ever replicate that, and I stand by that. But also, nobody can pay attention for that long. The reason I liked it so much, and I think people like it so much, is it feels so real. It genuinely feels like you're inside the lives of these women and these families, and it's just amazing, and I loved it, and it really did bring me so much joy. Today, we're finally going to talk about it. I think I watched it beginning to end in 2 months, honestly maybe shorter. I don't remember exactly, but it was while I was living in London. My boyfriend at the time was not very happy that I was spending all my time and energy. All of my attention was focused on the show. I have my trusty notebook here. I made some notes, some key points I wanted to talk about. But honestly, I'm really excited to talk about this. You guys love hearing about it, and I love talking about it. This is a show that I am very passionate about, and I have strong opinions that some may not agree with, so let's get into it. I have been drinking a little bit of wine, so I might be a little feisty. The fact that I went through and made a list of things I wanted to talk about, if I was already doing this, I should have really organized it, because this is going to be all over the place. I mean, I can edit it to make more sense, but I think I'm just going to let my brain roll, and you guys can listen as you choose. Okay, so the first thing on my list, and the most asked question that I've gotten, is who is my favorite of Rory Gilmore's boyfriends? Now, this is a really touchy subject for a lot of people, because when people like a boyfriend, they are passionate about the boyfriend. And I have some opinions that I know people don't agree with. So let's get into it. Let's start with number 1. Mr. Dean, the first boyfriend, Rory's first boyfriend. Now, like I said previously, I am a big fan of Jared Padalecki. I watch Supernatural, so I love that man. Take that as you will, as you hear how I feel about Dean. And I think everybody feels this way. In the beginning of the series, I loved Dean. I think everybody loved Dean. Well, everybody was very lovable in the beginning, right? And I stick by this, but I genuinely think that Dean loved Rory the most. I think he cared about her the most. I know that he was very possessive. We'll talk about Dean's jealousy and overprotectiveness. That man had a gut feeling. She did cheat on him with Jess. She kissed Jess. So it's not like it was unwarranted. He knew what he was talking about because she was a little cheater. And he had the whole women should stay at home, women should be in the kitchen kind of mindset. And you know what? Some women do want to just stay at home in the kitchen. If you watched Don't Worry Darling recently, a lot of women are saying, oh, Harry Styles wanted me to stay, cook and clean for him, I would do so. You know, some women feel the same about Dean. I don't want to do that. That's some girl's vibe. I mean, Rory made it clear in that one episode that she was okay with doing that because she got all dolled up. She made that dinner. She was fully prepared to be housewifey. Let's talk about when Dean told Rory that he loved her and she didn't say it back, and he freaked the fuck out, because that's where a lot of people got angry. Personally, I have said I love you to someone and they haven't said it back in that moment. I'm not the type of person who's going to react the way Dean did. Don't get me wrong. I wonder what his zodiac sign is. I would look it up, but Dean is clearly very obsessive, right? I think that's very obvious. I mean, he did build the girl a car. But also, like, everyone's in love with Rory. Like, everyone was obsessed with Rory. So, honestly, it didn't seem that far off. People cut off Dean in that moment when he got upset about that. For me, that didn't ruin him for me. I was like, you know what? Okay, he's upset. They're just not on the same love length. I get it. That's fine. Now let me tell you where Dean did wrong in my eyes for the first time. When Rory was studying her ass off, she was doing her volunteer work. She was like, you know what? Paris is putting in the work. I need to get into it. So she tells Dean, look, dude, I can't hang out. I got to study. I've got volunteer work. I'm busy. And he was angry. This man was not happy with her. That's where I was like, are you for real? But that's where his whole, you need to stay at home while I go do the dirty work, while I go work. That's where that all like ties together. Not that it's appropriate and that I'm okay with it, but that's where that came from. He was like, well, why are you don't need to go to college. You don't need to work. What are you doing? Come be my wifey. No, she didn't want to do that. Respect. See, this is when Rory was in her absolute prime. That turned me off for him. It didn't make me hate him. That did not make me a Dean hater. I understood it, okay? I was keeping people up to date about where I was in the show and how I was feeling. I had announced where I was in the show. People were like, get ready. The best guy is coming in. See, but this is questionable because some people say Logan is the best. But these were for my Jess lovers. These were the Jess lovers talking. They said, Jess is coming. Get ready. So I'm strapped in. I'm ready, right? Jess comes in. Dean's pissed. The people that are like, oh, he's jealous. It's nasty. Blah, 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 blah. Don't we all get a little jealous sometimes? Don't get me wrong. I think most guys would have been intimidated by Jess. He has the whole bad boy persona. He's hot. And let me just preface this right here. I'm making this video because I want to have the conversation. This is open to conversation. Get in the comments. Let me know how you feel because I would love to talk about it. Okay, and then Jess comes into the picture. I hated Jess at first. I was so thrown off because everyone was like, oh, you're going to love Jess. Jess is the best. Team Jess, 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 Jess. And then when this man showed up and opened his goddamn mouth, I was repulsed. Okay? Here's my thing. If I watched this show as a teenager, Jess would have been my favorite. Absolutely. Jess would have been my top tier guy. I would have longed for him. I would have lusted for him. But I have recovered from my past bad boy boyfriend trauma, and I'm a woman now. I'm a woman of high respects, questionably. In the beginning, okay, he gets better. Yes, I know. I thought Jess was a piece of shit. He thought he was so cool. He was just so disrespectful. He didn't respect authority whatsoever. And I understand, like, oh, teenage bad boy. But even, like, if you look at the first meetings of all the boyfriends, right? So with Dean, we have the cute meet in the hallway. That, like, made my heart skip a beat. I love that. That's, like, classic. That's very classic. Can you stop? My cat's trying to get my microphone. We have Logan's. Oh, write my number down. That was hot. That was sexy. It was cute. But then we have the Jess's where he just comes into her room and he's browsing as he pleases and he's like, let's leave. Granted, he didn't know that Rory was obsessed with her family. He has family issues. I think it was beyond foreign to him that somebody could actually like their parents. He rubbed me the wrong way. So that was my initial impression of him, but everyone was obsessed with him. I just don't get it. I think that the people who really like Jess must have watched it at a point in their life where they were just feeding for the bad boys because he just was not appealing to me in the beginning. He really wasn't. I was like, Dean is way better than Jess. That's just the way that I felt. And then Jess gets worse. In the beginning of the series, Dean seemed like he was a smart guy and he had a lot going for him, but they dumped him down throughout the series, and I will stand by that. But Jess obviously played to be stupid in the beginning, to Rory at least, and then come to find out he's honestly a genius, which I don't think was fair to Dean. I mean, obviously the writers knew what they were going to do with Dean, but they made Dean look so bad so that these other boyfriends would be good for the plot. I had to put myself in Rory's shoes, and I was like, okay, if I'm, how old was she? 17. Oh my god, at 17, 18, Jess would absolutely be my pick over Dean. I'd be like, why are you so obsessed with me? You want me? Then I don't want you anymore. I would absolutely want the guy who doesn't want me, because that's the thing. Jess would up and leave this girl constantly. I'm surprised she doesn't have more trust issues than she had in the future of the series. He'd be like, Rory, you're my everything. I want to be with you forever. And then one day, he's gone. Not even a note left in sight. He was horrible. Our brains work in such a funny way. I look on my past relationships with very toxic people. I always think about the positives, even though majority of the relationship was negative, but our brains just don't focus on that. I think that that's what all of you do who are Team Jess. I think that you're just like, but when he was good, he was really good. So he was traumatizing. But yeah, the whole up and leaving her any chance he gets with no notice just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe that's my trust issues and my fear of abandonment, but I didn't like that at all. And then we have the worst thing that Jess did. That is when he got so angry at Rory because she didn't want to have sex with him. I'm sorry. I don't know how. Don't get me wrong. Jess in the reboot, chef's kiss. People can grow. I get that. But during the original series, to be like, oh, I love Jess. That is horrible. It made me sick. And then she runs down the stairs to Dean, and in my eyes, I still like Dean better than Jess, so I'm like, wow, Dean to the rescue, right? But he's with Lindsay, right? This is an interesting video for me to make because I have really bad memory, so if I fuck things up, don't come for me. I'm just going off memory, and this is hard for me to do, especially because it was so many seasons long. But I'm trying my best, and I have a notebook. But after that, and Lorelai being like, he was angry with you because you didn't want to have sex with him, I was like, thank you. Exactly. I was like, you know what? No. Pretty sure he disappeared after that. This is the moment that everyone has been waiting for. You guys wanted to know who my favorite boyfriend was. And here it is. Logan Huntsberger, everyone. What? Don't get me wrong. I honestly think that they're all shitty. But again, why the show is so lovable is because it's so realistic. Like, I could see past partners in every boyfriend she had. I could see myself in all the stages of Rory. Like, that's why I love the show so much. Looks-wise, because I love Jared Padalecki so much, I think that Jared is the most attractive. But I think that Logan is the most charming, therefore is the most attractive in my eyes. He was just so charming. He had such a nice smile. Everyone was like, wait till Logan comes on. And as soon as I saw him and he just had his little smile, I was like, stop. So sexy. Also, I recognized him because my parents watch him in like the MD show that he's in. But he looks a lot different. Obviously, he's much older. So as we all know, Logan is a very rich boy. He comes from a very rich family, which I think is a funny parallel because Rory's family does have a lot of money, but she obviously grew up with her mom. Realistically, if things would have gone the way that Lorelai's parents wanted them to go, she would have been exactly like Logan. But he definitely recognized his privilege, and the fact that he was rebellious to his father gave him a little spice to me. Like I said, if I would have watched this show when I was younger, I would have been very much for Jess and not for Logan. But because now that I'm older, if I'm gonna date a man, considering how absolutely worthless they are, oh my god, considering how much they really a lot of the times don't have to offer. If I'm going to date a man, I'm going to date a rich man. He provided. He came through for Rory. And that to me is just so attractive. You know, she got so angry about him seeing other people when they were like sort of maybe broken up. I'm like, look, this man stated he had never really been in relationships. Like, you have to break this down for him, clearly. Like, she just didn't understand that. And so I honestly don't think that was a fault on his side. Whatever. Also, Clearly he was a man whore. We knew. For her to be shocked by this, I'm like, babe, until you put like the full label on it, like you can't be mad. God, I loved him. I thought he was great. I mean, he definitely had a temper and an alcohol problem, which is a lot. I mean, I have an ex with an alcohol problem, and the people with the alcohol problems are usually very interesting. That's how Logan was. He was fun, he was funny, he was charismatic, he was great. But he definitely had an alcohol problem. And he had daddy issues, clearly. He also had mommy issues. His mother was an interesting woman. The episode where Rory went to dinner with his family and they were just horrible to her. I had like secondhand, not embarrassment, but just like, oh my God, I feel like I was feeling her feelings. Again, the show was so real. I would be mortified if I was her. I was so scary. And then Logan was doing so great. And then he decided to propose to Rory freshly out of college without even consulting her. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they had ever brought up marriage. Here's my thing. If you're going to propose to someone, I think speaking about that happening is very important. You know, don't get me wrong. You don't go, hey, I want to propose. Would you say yes? That's very weird. You don't do that. But to mention marriage and to be like, hey, like, I want to get married to you. How does that sound? That's important. Obviously, he was the most egotistical out of the three. I think that's where it came from. I think the fact that he assumed that she would just be like, yes, anything for you, because he bought her things and he was nice to her. And I think that he has a twisted view on relationships because of his parents. I think that that's exactly how it was with his mother. My camera died. Sorry. Like I was saying, I think that Logan looked at his mother and his father's relationship and saw that it was exactly like that. Logan's dad provided for his mom, and that was enough to keep her in the relationship, and so he thought that that's all he had to do. Not that he didn't provide in other areas, but I think that he just expected Rory to be like, yeah. I don't know, it was just weird that he just assumed. The fact that he didn't even consult her about it. Okay, but after watching the reboot, babe, you should have took the proposal. Baby girl. Because now she's a mistress. She could have been wifey. She could have been in her bag. And now she's just a mistress. Possibly carrying his baby. But yeah, so there you have it. That's how I feel about the boys. Logan's my favorite. Now you know. Now let's talk about Lorelai. So Lorelai was, at least for the longest period of time, my favorite character. I do have mommy issues, and so to see Rory and her mom have a relationship like that, I was enthralled. I keep bringing this up, but if I would have watched this show in high school and seen the relationship Rory had with Lorelai, I would have been fucked up, because I would have been like, why don't I have that? I think Lorelai was amazing in majority of the show. The more that I've gone back and thought about the show as a whole, she had a lot to do with Rory's downfall. And it wasn't just her, it was the community around her. The reason that Rory ended up the way she did, and I'm talking reboot, is because of Lorelai and her grandparents and everyone around her that absolutely praised her. And I don't want to say for the bare minimum, because Rory was very driven and she cared about school and she had aspirations, right? But also at the same time, I just feel like she wasn't actually passionate about anything. I know that she wanted to be a journalist. I don't know. I look at Paris, and Paris is like my favorite gal. I love Paris. People think Paris is annoying, everything, but I'm like, Paris knew what she wanted. She had backup plan on backup plan on backup plan. I think also the fact that she had really bad family issues, she had to find hope in another part of her life, and she just did. In her future, she was like, you know what, like, I'm not happy where I am, and I'm gonna make a better life for myself and her children, you know? I mean, obviously it got a little rocky with homeboy, but I don't know, I just feel like Rory was so coddled and everyone was so obsessed with her. The only other kid that they talked about in Stars Hollow, besides like Dean, which they didn't really talk about him, he was just like the love interest, was Lane. I love Lane, by the way. Lane deserved better, so much better. Everyone was obsessed with her, and everyone would have given her anything she wanted at any inconvenience. Nobody ever told her no. And when Lorelai did tell her no, she was, oh my God, she freaked out. I think the first time that they really got in a big fight was when she had sex with Dean, right? Granted, Lorelai I'm very glad that she disciplined her in that moment. And not even disciplined. She was just like, what the hell are you doing? Because yes, what the hell are you doing having sex with a married man? Rory? That's when I was like, you know what, girl? I don't know. That's when Dean got shitty for me. That's when I was like, you know what, Dean? Because I think they're both at fault. I think he was being manipulative. And I think that she is a fucking idiot. For Lorelai to tell her no for the first time in her life in that moment when it is something that huge, everyone's like, oh, Lorelai's a cool mom. But I'm like, she fucked up. She's the reason that Rory was so stuck up and privileged. And I can't get behind that. I love Lorelai. And obviously, like, you look at it and you're like, yeah, great mom. I wish I had a mom like that. That's how I felt. I'm like, oh, I wish my mom was that chill. But majority of the times, Lorelai was a friend to Rory and not a parent. And she needed a parent because she wouldn't have done half the shit she did if Lorelai would have disciplined her. But then again, they wouldn't have had the relationship they had and it would have just fucked up the whole series. I understand that. I feel for Lorelai because she tried so hard to raise Rory humble so that she didn't grow up like Lorelai did and the kids around her. Because of all the attention and the praise that Rory got, it made her worse off. Like, the reason that Paris did so well in my eyes is because she didn't have that community around her, so she felt like she did need to work hard. Rory didn't feel like she needed to work hard because I feel like she always thought she had something to fall back on. And I don't mean money, but she had a community. She had support. Paris didn't have support like that, you know? And same with Lane. Like, I mean, her mom redeemed herself in the end. Rory just, like, she had what a lot of kids don't have. It's a good support system. It's a good family. I know Lorelai and her parents had issues, but, like, Rory had a good relationship with her grandparents and her mom. And I know she has daddy issues. Like, Chris is a whole different subject, but, like, she still, I feel like, had a good relationship with Chris. I feel like they would have made it a little more obvious if Rory had major daddy issues. I know she has daddy issues because, like, she had an interesting journey with men, but I feel like it wasn't that traumatizing for her. Like, her dad was still in her life. Paris was literally raised by her nanny, and I don't know where Lane's dad was the whole time, but, like, her mom was uber strict, and it was just, like, I don't know, Rory just, like, had the best of it all. It just makes me mad. I'm going to quickly touch on Lorelai and her relationships because for me it's not that significant. There's one relationship that is significant to me, but really quickly, from the beginning I knew that she was going to end up with Luke. Like, it was very obvious. They had chemistry from the beginning and throughout the whole show, and I'm madly in love with Luke Danes. I love that man. I want to marry Luke Danes. I'm in love with that man. But Max came in, Max Medina. I feel like we don't talk about Max Medina enough. I thought he was great. Lorelai has issues. That's the end of the story. She had too many problems for him, and clearly, I mean, she cut off the marriage, whatever. I thought Max was great, and honestly, if they would have ended up together, like, he would have been great for her. I don't think that there's really any problems with Max. I thought he was great. And then, obviously, we have Chris. Right, Chris. The episode where Chris and Luke got into a literal fist fight, I loved that. I thought that was great. I think they both deserved what they got. I was never rooting for Chris and Lorelai. I get the whole, oh, it's nice for, like, mom and dad to be together, but Chris is a loser. Chris is literally a loser, and I don't think that he was good enough for Lorelai ever, or Rory. I think obviously it's good to have the dad in the picture if he can be, and he can be supportive. When he got all that money, great. I was so glad that he could financially support them, but I think that he had the mental state of a 19-year-old boy. From the first episode, I pictured Lorelai with Luke, and I just couldn't imagine her with anyone else. And so, yeah, I was very happy that she ended up with Luke. But let's talk about where I did think Luke went wrong. When Luke found out about his daughter, he went about it so wrong in my eyes, and I think he was absolutely at fault for them not being together sooner, because I understand. I mean, I actually don't understand. Like, I have no idea how that would feel, but I understand that he was so taken aback by learning that he had a child all over the place, because he's like, wow, I have this kid and I missed 13 years of her life. That's a lot, and that's really hard, and I feel like he's such a good guy. That was really hard for him to come to terms with. But the fact that he was so untransparent with Lorelai, and completely kept her out of the loop when she would have been such a saving grace for him, I feel like, in that time. That makes me sad. That's what hurts me. I mean, I almost said hopefully I'll never know what it's like to have a child that I didn't know about. Of course I would know what it's like. I would know if I had the kid, you know? Literally birthed it. I'm an idiot. So I wasn't mad at Lorelai really when she went and slept with Chris. I thought, fair. Like, Luke was being horrible to her, and she needed companionship. She needed someone in that moment, and she went to Chris. Not that I wanted it to be Chris, but I understood why she did that. But yeah, the whole, like, them going to Paris and getting married and yada yada yada, like, I just was always, like, I was never like, oh, it's really cute. I just never really liked Chris. I thought he was a piece of shit. Like, he was a deadbeat dad. I'm sorry, I thought he was a deadbeat dad. I thought he sucked. So yeah, that's how I feel about Lorelai's relationships. I'm really glad that she ended up with Luke. I absolutely adore that man. I guess let's talk about Rory. Rory, in the beginning of the series, was everything that I, honestly, even now, that I, like, wanted to be. I don't know, she was a cool, mysterious girl who, like, just reads books, and she's innocent, and it was cute. I loved it. And she was a good person. She was nice. She just turned into a entitled, spoiled little brat. Obviously, her sleeping with a married man was just absolutely fucking horrible. I mean, first she cheats on Dean with Jess. They have a little smooch, and then she sleeps with Dean, and then she's just horrible to her mother. There's all the shit with her grandparents, and she runs to her grandparents anytime anything goes wrong with her mom, and then the absolute worst of it all is when she literally gets criticism for the first time in her entire life from Logan's dad. She runs to Logan, steals a yacht, and goes to jail. Somebody didn't hand something to you for the first time in your entire life, and you go and you end up in jail that night because you're so distraught about it. People were so upset about how Rory was portrayed in the reboot, but I think she ended up exactly how I thought she would have. I learned to strongly dislike Rory as the seasons went on, but I absolutely adored her in the beginning, and I've still only watched the show once, and I'm very excited to start it from the beginning, which I will be doing this fall. I have been very tempted multiple times to just start it over and it be like a background show, like I feel about New Girl. I turn on New Girl and I just watch it all the time. I want to seriously watch Gilmore Girls from beginning to end. So, but I want to talk about Lorelai's parents. In the beginning, because I loved Lorelai so much, Emily rubbed me the wrong way. She really did. I completely understand why Lorelai was traumatized by her. I do. She is a hard ass woman. Absolutely. I understand her. I get it. I don't think that she was the greatest mom. That's not what I'm saying. Lorelai was a lot of work, and I think any mother would just be, they wouldn't know what to do with all of that. Like, I mean, she did get pregnant. They weren't kicking her out of the house. I mean, obviously, like, it wasn't the ideal scenario for Lorelai, but they weren't cutting her off. They weren't being horrible to her. I also understand Lorelai's wanting to remove herself from that. I understand both parties, but I just think Emily loved her a lot, and I think the whole thing just kind of made me sad. I think because it reminds me a lot of me and my mom's relationship, and we had a rocky relationship when I was younger, and the older we get, the better it got. I mean, I think Lorelai was way too hard on her in her older years. Think about the funeral in the reboot, like the fact that she really genuinely couldn't even say one positive thing about her dad, knowing how badly it would hurt Emily. The episode where Lorelai is on the mountain and she calls Emily and tells her about the story of them being at the mall when she could have gotten in trouble. Richard never told Emily about what happened, and it was just a very sweet memory, and I think they tried. I mean, don't get me wrong, they had their faults for sure. I have a lot of respect for Emily, and I think that she was really amazing, and she grew to be one of my favorite characters. Here's the thing, you guys, I could talk about this show and the characters for hours, really, and I know this video can't be very long, so I have to cut it off at a certain point. There's just a lot to talk about. Really, there is a lot to talk about. I am going to do a little honorable mention. I wanted to talk really quickly about Lane and how I can't believe they got her pregnant with twins after having sex the first time. Oh, she just deserves so much better than that. I mean, maybe if it would have been with Dave, I would have understood it. I would have liked to be impregnated by Adam Brody with twins. Leighton Meister is typing. That just made me sad. It made me sad for her. And the fact that she told Rory that sex is just so nasty and horrible and that she didn't enjoy it, it just made me sad. I'm like, she just deserved better. I talked about Paris. Paris is my favorite. Had really bad family issues, but she was my favorite. And she worked hard and she was a badass. And I know she was annoying at times, but like I watched the show with my parents sometimes and they were like, she's annoying. And I was like, you don't get it. You don't get it. You have to see it all. She's not annoying. Leave her alone. I briefly had brought up Dave. Adam Brody left to go be in the OC, but I really would have liked to see more of him. He was my favorite boyfriend in Gilmore Girls. He was amazing. He was perfect. Oh my god, he was so cute. I actually haven't watched the OC fully. I've watched a couple episodes, but because I love Adam Brody, I will be continuing it. I didn't really talk about Suki and Jackson. I mean, I love Melissa McCarthy. I didn't even know that she was in Gilmore Girls until I watched it. Obviously, I wish I would have seen more of her in the reboot, but obviously she, at the time at least, in 2016, 2017, when the reboot came out, she was a very busy woman. She was booked and busy. She was doing stuff. She couldn't be in it that much. But I love Suki. I think she was a very good character to play alongside of Lorelai. Jackson wasn't my favorite person in the world. I mean, he was cute. He was good for Suki, I guess. But also, he was fucking annoying. I didn't like him that much. Okay, let's talk about how Lorelai was portrayed as poor. That, to me, is just crazy, because the fact that they were eating at Luke's twice a day, and I mean, sometimes he was like, oh yeah, no, don't pay for the coffee, you're good. They're eating out twice a day, and then they're buying all this junk food. They're always getting takeout. That's not a poor woman's spending habits. Lorelai was not a poor woman. That was not a poor family. The constant eating out and buying the junk food, but then being very, very small, skinny women was so odd. And they never took more than 2 bites of their food, but they were always talking about eating and how much they eat, and Luke was always like, you guys eat like shit, blah 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 blah. But they were not eating that food. I'm glad I watched the show as an older woman, because I think it really would have skewed my reality on a lot of things, money and body image. And it definitely, the show is a little bit problematic. I mean, sometimes they would sit and talk about somebody on the screen. They'd be like, oh yeah, that fat girl, that fat guy. I don't know. I know it wouldn't slide nowadays, but they were not a poor family. I could talk about this for a very long time, but those are my main things I want to talk about. Those are the things you wanted me to talk about. I would love to talk about it more. I'm completely open to it. I love this show, and I can't wait to watch it again, because there's a million things I probably missed. But I really enjoyed this. I love you guys, and I love you for putting me onto this show. Maybe we'll talk about this again. But I definitely, in a sense, want to keep the Gilmore Girls content going. I will. I have ideas, I have things planned, but I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and happy fall. We're getting back into Gilmore Girls season.